very dear and esteemed guest, Sayyid AMMAR NAKSHAWANI. And the topic of tonight's show will be to commemorate the Shahadat of Imam Jawad. The topic of the show will be the life and biography of the ninth Imam, Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. Before we begin the topic, I think it's important to understand why delving into the lives of such characters and individuals within the school of the Ahlul Bayt and within Islam is so important. As followers of the school of Ahlul Bayt, we find that sometimes perhaps there's more of a focus, unfortunately, on some individuals more than others. And while we have love for Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it's also important that we do not neglect the so-called less recognized imams, such as Imam Jawad alayhi salam. So really the purpose of this evening's show will be, inshallah, to build the connection of the viewers with their imam, for the viewer to understand him more, to know more about his life, and inshallah see what lessons we can learn. Because obviously, inshallah, may Allah make all of us be able to do his ziyarah and to visit the imam. And inshallah it would be good if we have this knowledge, so when we do visit the imam one day, that we go armed and we know exactly the status of this great and untouchable individual. I'd also again like to send my condolences to all the mu'mineen and the mu'minat on this sad occasion, which is the shahadat of Imam Jawad alayhi salam. But at the same time, hope that we can in a way use tonight to really keep his legacy alive and to keep his message and his spirit alive, and to show the oppressors and those who are the enemies of the message of the Ahlul Bayt that we will never forget the Imams, we will never forget them and the message that they stood for, and so nothing will ever stop us from speaking about them and making clear their message. Also, I'd like to send my condolences to the brothers and sisters who are living next to Imam Jawad in Baghdad. As we've seen this week, we have been victims of multiple bombings and attacks which have been claimed by Al-Qaeda in the media this week, attacking the followers of the Ahlul Bayt, and as well in Pakistan, the same thing, a continuous theme, shall we say, from the time of the death of the Prophet ﷺ until today. We have seen the followers oppressed. So we would like to also send our condolences to them and to the Imam of our time, Ajjalallah Ta'ala Farajah Sharif. I would like to begin the show by welcoming Sayyid AMMAR NAKSHAWANI to another episode of the 20th hour. Assalamu alaikum, Sayyid.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Thank you very much for joining us again, and inshallah we're going to use these next few hours to learn really more about the life of Imam Jawad, who was, who was known to be associated with youth and to be a very young imam, both when he became the imam and when his imamate began, and both when he was martyred at the time. But just to begin with, can we discuss briefly, if you don't mind, who Imam Jawad was in terms of what year he was born and who his parents were?
Imam Jawad alayhi salam occupies a prominent position in Islamic history as being revered as being one of the greatest scholars within the religion, a scholar who people from many different schools of jurisprudence would gain their knowledge from. And it's no surprise that these schools would gain their knowledge from the Imam, considering the fact that they knew that he was the inheritor of the knowledge of the Imams that had preceded him. As in, when we're discussing Imam Jawad alayhi salam, we're discussing the great-grandson of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. On the first level, we're discussing the son of Imam Ali ibn Musa Rida alayhi salam. And an Imam who was born in the 195th year after Hijrah, in the land of Medina. We find that his mother originally was a lady from North Africa. And you find that many of the narratives tell us that it was not unusual for the Imams of Ahlul Bayt to either have parents who had come, as in like a mother who had come from the area of Africa, and that you find that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was married to a lady as well who was from North Africa by the name of Hamida. But the Imam's mom was also not only from African circles, but also at the same time was a descendant of Mary the Coptic, who of course was a wife of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alih, who had given him the son by the name of Ibrahim. So he was born in 195th year after Hijrah, and really was born in a very important period in Islamic history, a period of, different discussions and political disputes, theological disputes, jurisprudential disputes. So it wasn't the easiest period to be born in, but a period where really he excelled, without a shadow of doubt.
And how long did his imamate last for? Because we will come back into that more, but how long was he the imam upon the earth?
Well, according to most narratives, he was an imam of the school of Ahl al-Bayt for 17 years. Okay. So that most narratives indicate that he was born 150 after Hijrah, and he assumes the imamate in and around the 203rd year after Hijrah until 220 AH. So 17 years is when his imamate was openly declared.
Sure. And you've mentioned that he was the son of Imam Ali ibn Musa Rada alayhi salam. Who were his children?
The children of
Imam Jawad.
Imam Jawad, in terms of his children, well, we're going right towards the end of his biography. But in terms of his children, Imam Jawad, as we know, and very clearly within the books of history, Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam was one of his children, who's seen as the 10th of the imams of the school of Ahl al-Bayt. And he had a son by the name of Musa, who is buried in the land of Qum, near Bibi Ma'suma. And he had a daughter who, of course, occupies a prominent position in relation to the birth of the 12th Imam, Ajjar Allah Farajahu Sharif, and that being the daughter by the name of Hakima. If you go to Samarat today, you'll find that Hakima is buried there, Imam Ali al-Hadi is buried there, Imam Hassan al-Askari is buried there, and it's seen as the center of the occultation of the Imam of our time. So most narratives indicate that he had al-Hadi, he had Musa, and he had Hakima.
Thank you. And as you mentioned, we are moving forward to the end of his life, but we will come back and discuss his relationship, especially with the 10th Imam, Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam, later on in this show. In terms of, I mean, I don't know how you want to approach this, but in terms of his, because I like to get the relationships out of the way first, his wives, so to speak. And later on we will come back and see, who he was married to in terms of the caliph of the time. But is it true that he was also, one of his wives was from the line of Ammar ibn Yasir, may Allah be pleased with him, alayhi salam?
Yes, as in there's different opinions to the names of the wife, but the most common opinion is Samana, and they state that she was a descendant from the line of Ammar ibn Yasir. So you had a noble lineage from both his mother's side and his wife's side, and she, of course, is the one who had given birth to Imam Ali al-Hadi alayhi salam.
Who were the Imam's most prominent companions, so to speak? I mean, who is it who stands out as amongst his followers at the time? Obviously, for Amir al-Mu'mineen, you have obviously Ammar bin Yasir, Abu Dhar. So who were Imam Jawad's main companions?
In terms of Imam Jawad's main companions, once again, we're going very far ahead in his biography, and hopefully we'll focus on his youth. But in terms of his main companions, you've got Ali ibn Mazhiyar, where you'll find in many of the narratives is seen as one of the most revered companions of Imam Jawad alayhi salam, a man who originally was a Christian and had come towards the religion of Islam, and was from the people of Ahwaz, and a person from whom 30 different books are with us until today, jurisprudential manuals which people gain knowledge from, and he was seen as a very close companion of Imam Jawad, to the extent that Imam Jawad on many occasions would state, if you ever need an answer on any jurisprudential issue, go towards Ali. And you had other companions as well, who were known to be very loyal, especially people like, you had like Al-Hasan al-Bayzanti, who was from the people of Kufa, and the Imam would often refer to him when people needed knowledge from the Imam on jurisprudential issues as well, because we notice that with these companions there is like an organization which is formed, an organization which is concerned with the collection of khums, the collection of zakat, but also with teachings for people who are within the school of Ahl al-Bayt, but maybe in different areas, be they maybe in the land of Kufa or in the land of Medina or even in the land of Egypt. And these were seen as being very prominent companions of the Imam as well.
And you mentioned in your answer the importance of youth previously, so inshallah we can now start to focus on the importance of Imam al-Jawad as a role model for young people, because sometimes it's very difficult for the youth in the 21st century to be able to relate to Islamic role models today. We don't really see many, unfortunately, who are giving that role model. But yet, what can we take from the Imam as a role model for young people, especially in terms of his knowledge?
Well, Imam Jawad alayhi salam, we recognize that you know, when Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida finds out that his wife's going to be giving birth to a son, it wasn't an easy period for the Imam, as Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida, alayhi salam, according to different narrations, was in his mid-40s. People were taunting him in some cases that he wasn't, wasn't going to have any children to continue his line. So when he does have his child, and he has Imam Jawad come into his life, you find that it's only a few years later, within 9 years or so, that Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida passes away. So Imam Jawad is seen as the Imam who arguably faced the most intense pressure in his earliest period, on this earth. And the idea that, let's say, other Imams had assumed Imamate at the age of 20, at the age of 30, let's say. But with Imam Jawad, he assumed Imamate at the age of 9. And when you assume Imamate at the age of 9, it means the mantle and the responsibility of the protection of the knowledge and the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the knowledge which has been given within the Quran is now all on your shoulders. Sometimes today we may have youth who are in their teens who can't bear to take any responsibility on in their life in terms of spreading the message of Ahlul Bayt, whereas you find Imam Jawad alayhi salam is thrown really in the deep end, in our eyes. Of course, in the eyes of an Imam of Ahlul Bayt, the discussion concerning knowledge, which we'll come to in a second, that area they find as being an opportunity to serve God's message. But without a doubt, it wasn't easy. Your fathers passed away. When Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida passes away, would you believe there are even some Shia of the time who certain narratives give the indication that they were in tears? That, who's going to be the Imam who, follows him? As we know that his son is alive. We know his son is of young age. And not everybody was privy to the knowledge that, Muhammad al-Jawad is the successor. There were those who knew, the close companions who we had mentioned. But there were those who didn't. And there were even those who came forward from the family of, even Imam Musa ibn Ja'far had a son by the name of Abdullah, the brother of Imam, and he had come forward and said that he's the Imam. And so people were uncertain. But you may be 9 years of age, but there's a principle which God has shown within the Quran, and that is, if you've got the ability to take knowledge and to protect knowledge and to disseminate knowledge, then God will provide you with an inspiration to be able to spread that knowledge far and wide. And that's why you find it's at this crucial moment that we see that the Imam from the outset is tested on knowledge by whom? First, by his own community. His own community tests him first. Because when Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida passes away, it's the Shia who are first wondering, is this person ready to take on this mantle of knowledge?
Yeah. And you say that he's tested, and inshallah later on we're going to come back to certain situations. I just want to give a message to the viewers that the phone lines are now open, and if you would like to call us and ask any questions, the number is 0208 900 1741, and inshallah that should be along the bottom of your screen at different points throughout the show. So that's 0208 900 1741. So inshallah we'd like to hear from you and hear any questions you may have. So before we gave that message, you were discussing situations where Imam Jawad was